This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Danse, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sheila North. Janet Stewart is away. 3 men were attacked early this morning in separate areas of Winnipeg's Point Douglas neighborhood, and police say all 3 incidents may be related. The CBC's Andrew Wiles was in the area and has this report.
It's in the parking lot by this apartment on Main Street near Jarvis Avenue that the first assault happened. It was about 4:30 a.m. when police found a man seriously injured. He's in the hospital in critical condition. Just half an hour later, another assault, a couple blocks away on Henry Avenue off Main Street. That man was taken to hospital in unstable condition. Then, another half hour later, officers patrolling near Logan and Israeli found a third injured man. He's in stable condition. Police say they believe the 3 attacks are related. There are no arrests so far. More than an hour later, police found a woman dead in this apartment on Jarvis Avenue. They haven't said that this death is connected, but they do call it suspicious. Andrew Wiles, CBC News, Winnipeg.
There are more healthcare woes in Manitoba. The largest hospital in the province scrambled over the weekend to find enough nurses to work in emergency. The government says it's training more people. Critics say that's not happening fast enough. CBC's Bartley Kivas has the story.
This hospital in Steinbach is getting a $32 million renovation. Meanwhile, in Winnipeg, this hospital struggled over the weekend to find enough staff to work in its emergency department. There were only 8 nurses on shift at Health Sciences Centre Emergency on Friday night instead of 24, leaving HSC unable to staff all the beds in its ER.
If there isn't a nurse to look after a patient in the bed, it's just a piece of furniture.
Doug Alveson is a former Liberal MP who works as an ER doctor.
I've been practicing for over 20 years. I've never seen it. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first time this has happened in Winnipeg, to have closures of this magnitude and to have that many beds closed due to lack of staff.
The Manitoba Nurses Union echoes that sentiment.
This is probably the worst we've seen in the last couple of years.
The health minister acknowledges hospitals are struggling.
The pandemic has amplified and exposed some gaps, some barriers and challenges that we need to overcome.
Audrey Gordon thanked nurses for stepping up to fill shifts this weekend, but she chafed at the idea those nurses were difficult to find.
I wouldn't use the term scrambling because the system has been looking at ways to address the needs in the emergency department.
That involves training more nurses. Their union says that isn't enough.
That is a long-term solution that will benefit in 3 to 4 years. So in the meantime, we need every nurse that's in the system to stay in the system.
Gordon says she hopes there won't be shortages this fall. Ailson says he's worried about the return of cold, flu, and COVID season.
I'm not optimistic that there's going to be a significant change between now and then. I'm apprehensive about the working conditions I'll find.
ERs are also struggling to care for patients waiting to be admitted to hospital. Gordon blames part of that problem on people showing up at emergency instead of urgent care. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Later on in the program, we will have much more of the exchange between Minister Gordon and reporter Bartley Kivas. And the health minister was in Steinbach to announce the start of renovations at Bethesda Regional Health Centre. It's getting a new renal unit so people don't have to leave Steinbach for dialysis.
We like to say in Steinbach that it's worth the trip, and we mean it's worth the trip here, not for us to have to go for medical service to other places.
Meanwhile, many people living in the western area here in Winnipeg are taking charge in helping the community's food security through mutual aid. When struggling families receive food, they don't keep it for themselves. They make sure it goes to as many people as possible. The CBC's Joanne Roberts has that story.
Some of this food is getting ready to go out to the Weston neighborhood. It comes from a number of stores and organizations. It's perfectly good food that would normally end up in a dumpster at the end of the week. Instead, Kat Greer uses it to feed her community.
Within hours, it's out the door, and people have it in their homes and they can use them within the next couple of days.
Kat and her husband Corey spent half the weekend making hampers. Although the Greers struggle with food security themselves, it's no question that the food they receive has to be shared with other people.
I know that if our needs are not being met, other people's aren't either.
At minimum, someone's going to get bread or potatoes. Even if there's one thing left, somebody's still getting something.
One of the places the Greers get food is the Leftovers Foundation. It's an organization that focuses on reducing food waste and increasing food access.
We work with different business partners to rescue food that's either at the end of its life or just due to the business cycle can't be sold, but it's still perfectly good.
On weekends, some of the Leftovers' charity partners are closed, but the food still needs to go somewhere. People like the Greers fill that need by making hampers.
Food is a human right, and nobody knows what they need better than the individual themselves.
Mutual Aid in Weston is a community effort. Julian Caleb Woodford is a single dad. He's received hampers from the Greers, and Woodford and his son also make their own. They even deliver it to people in the Weston community.
We'll go for a walk in the local area, or we'll meet up with somebody in the local area. Or for the mutual aid, the people that are helping our family, we help them that way too if they want.
What matters more is that there's food for all.
According to Food Matters Manitoba, over 14% of Manitobans experience food insecurity, an issue that disproportionately affects Indigenous and Black households. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And the city is watching paint dry along select summer cycling routes in hopes of slowing motor vehicles down more than slashing the speed limit has been able to do. The pavement art helps calm traffic because it creates a perception a roadway is more narrow, said Eric Dixon, a livable street specialist within the City of Winnipeg's Public Works Department.
We have our enhanced summer bike routes, and Churchill Drive here is one of them. And we have been monitoring the speeds and traffic volumes on them since they came into force in May. And we saw on some of these enhanced summer bike routes that speeds were still a little high from motor vehicles. And so we were coming up with some different ideas of how we might introduce some temporary traffic calming measures into the street. And this was another way to also beautify and activate the street. We have over 15 artists working on 16 different sites on 4 of our enhanced summer bike routes. So Churchill Drive, where we're at, Wellington Crescent, Lyndale Drive, and Kilkenny Drive in South Winnipeg. And so what we've done is we've painted out some different temporary traffic calming measures. So these approximate permanent style traffic calming measures, but just using paint. So instead of using concrete or asphalt, we're just painting them out as a way to produce a little bit of traffic calming on the street, and well as beautify the street and activate it with some public art. We were monitoring the speeds on these streets since they were installed in May, and when we got our data back here in June, we were seeing that the speeds were still a little high, so we started brainstorming different ideas of what else could we do on a temporary basis that might help traffic calm these streets a little bit, and paint installations was the top choice that came up for us. And so we quickly started putting together a program and reached out to Cool Streets, and it all came together quite fast in the last month or so. We're trying to get everything installed here in the next 2 weeks before the end of August. We're hoping for good weather that cooperates with us, so some nice sun and a little rain to make sure that we have some good paint days. So far so good, so we hope to have it all done before the end of the month.
A First Nation in Manitoba is resting up today after holding its first powwow in 150 years this past weekend. The CBC's Joanne Roberts is back with that story.
Drums were beating in Lake St. Martin First Nation on Sunday to mark the first powwow the community has seen since 1872. There was a sense of excitement in the air as people celebrated by dancing and singing to the beat of the drums. Chief Christopher Travers has been on the First Nations Council for 12 years. A month and a half ago, he became the chief. Holding a powwow right away was very important to him.
My community came from a flooded-out community about 12 years ago, and this is a way of moving forward and healing.
Our culture is our way of life. You know, the way we bring up our kids, what we eat, and how we look after each other.
That's elder and grandmother Florence Wood. Wood says generations ago, the community was stripped of its culture by settlers. Upholding these traditions are important to reclaim the culture for the next generations.
brings the people together, young people together, so they could be proud of who they are.
The theme of the powwow was healing, which Trevor said is needed in his community. He says there was an attempt to host a powwow in the 60s, but church influence shut it down quickly. This is why this time the band council wanted the church's blessing first, to practice their traditions while acknowledging that Lake St. Martin is also a deeply Christian community. They approved, and the powwow became one of Travers's first actions as the new chief. Mervyn Sinclair was the organizer for the event. He danced all weekend and expected to be tired and sore, but elders reassured everyone that they would be all right.
When you hear the sound of the first drum, they said, when we do our first grand entry, that was Friday evening, that will change. You won't feel that tiredness anymore. And they were right.
Trevor says he hopes this is a new beginning for the community and they continue for a second annual powwow here at Lake St. Martin. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Lake St. Martin First Nation.
And construction has begun on a massive state-of-the-art greenhouse just outside of Dauphin. Nearly a decade in the making, this project by Vermilion Growers is scheduled to open in December with the first planting in the new year. The first phase, worth more than $32 million, will see 10 acres of tomatoes. The CBC's Karen Pauls has more.
We're going to be growing tomato on the vine year-round and bringing fresh tomatoes to central Canada, basically focusing on reduction of transportation time, focusing on local food production, and focusing on food security for central Canada.
Why Dauphin and why tomatoes?
So tomatoes are the second most consumed vegetable around the world, next to potatoes. Right now, tomatoes are also one of the easier crops to grow in a greenhouse. And since it's our first venture in greenhouse growing, we wanted to ensure our success by staying with a very stable crop. And there's a huge market. So our first crop will be all tomato on the vine, which are those lovely 5 clusters of tomatoes. And we'll hopefully be planting in the new year very, very soon.
Why Dauphin?
Dauphin is actually, the location is great. In terms of logistics, we're very close to Winnipeg, of course, very close to 5 hours from Saskatoon, Regina. All the distribution centers for most of the large grocery stores are within an easy day's drive. Of course, if we expand out to Calgary, Edmonton, it's still within an easy day's drive for us. The other really good fit with Dauphin is that Dauphin is an agricultural community, and there's so much support for this kind of project in the community, and we're looking at economic development as well for the community. Our first phase will be employing about 25 full-time employees, which is huge for the community of Dauphin.
The greenhouse itself, this is a huge project for the province of Manitoba, really the first of its kind at this scale with the technology that we're bringing here. We've worked with international consultants and suppliers from all around the world really to try and bring the best expertise here to this project in Dauphin. So we're using, really this is cutting edge technology that's being used around the world, and this is really for the purpose of growing tomatoes is ultimately the goal. When you think about sustainability for the project, one of the big things is water, so our water use. And what's really fascinating about the project is that we capture all of the rain, all of the snow, any type of precipitation that comes onto the roof, and we capture all of that, collect it, and then use it to irrigate inside the facility. So inside it's pretty humid in the greenhouse, and so with all the plants growing, and with the heat, you end up with a lot of condensation on the inside of the glass, and we capture that and use that for irrigating as well. So we're using every drop of water that we can, we collect to actually feed to the plants.
And you're using natural gas to fuel it?
That's right, yeah. So we're using natural gas boilers. So actually just behind me here, these are our boilers that came over from Europe. And what's interesting about these is that we actually collect the exhaust gas. We strip out the carbon dioxide. So that's typically an emission from burning natural gas, but we actually collect that and feed it back to the plants. They use it for photosynthesis. So it's a super cool thing. It's a win-win. Environmentally, it's great because we have less emissions that way, and it also boosts our yield for the crop.
It means a lot for development. I mean, we got a lot going for us. We're a big little city, but it's everybody's dream to get a development like this in their small community, and this is one of those things, right? I like the fact that it surprises people, but if you really think about it and you learn more about it, it's actually not. It is an agricultural product. And in economic development, we learn that when you develop something new, you're either close to the product or you're close to the market. And we're not always lucky in Dauphin because we're not always close to the market or close to the product. And this is something that really fits us. We are an agriculturally driven economy. And it's a greenhouse, and that's new. There's not too much of that going on in Manitoba, so it's definitely something new, but it is something that fits what we do. I mean, we grow stuff, and to see a tomato plant like this coming here is just super exciting. I'm Dutch, so I grew up amongst lots of greenhouses. So for me, it was something that came as like, what's so special about it? Because I've seen it so much. But if you really think about it, like the Dutch did it because they wanted to learn how to grow product in a very condensed, small space. And the reason why we haven't seen it in Manitoba is because we have so much space, right? But then learning that you can sustainably grow a product all year round is that's top notch, and that's very exciting. And we hope to see other spin-offs, that other businesses will benefit from it, or will come up with their own ideas, or will provide assistance or some sort of other service to the operation. So it's, for us, it's just the start of something new, really.
Meteorologist John Stoddard joins us now, and very interesting.
Yeah,
I like
really.
to see those kind of projects.
Imagine
especially in
fresh
North.
tomatoes, toasted tomato sandwiches in February. And you know, you think of these greenhouses. Imagine if we had a whole bunch of those across northern Manitoba. The health benefits, the economic benefits, and you know, to the not just the economy, but the environment as well. Really something.
And they're less dependent on sunny weather like this?
Yeah, that's true, and warm weather, right. So it can happen even in the middle of winter. Right now I'm watching a severe thunderstorm warning that I want to get to. Look at the satellite and radar, and you look down to the bottom right of your screen, and I'll zoom in that and bring in the lightning tracker, because we've got a severe thunderstorm that is around 15 kilometers northwest of Sprague right now in the Piney area, right along Highway 12, and it's almost stationary. The main threats, of course, heavy rain and the lightning, but nickel-sized hail and some very strong wind gusts are being reported in that storm. So this entire region is now in a severe thunderstorm warning. We saw that earlier today out towards northwestern Ontario through Kenora. Really big storm, but what happened is it weakened very quickly. And before noon today, there were more storms up in the area around Riverton and just north of Gimli, up around Hecla. Again, those moved out over the lake and were never really warned as severe storms. But we'll watch that one in the southeast and see how it moves along. Right now, 25. We did get to 27 degrees earlier today, and then 26, and then back to 27, back to 25. But this is the one that you need to watch. This is the humidity, and that is a dew point of 20. So what does that mean? I'm going to put this in terms that are easier to understand for people that in humid conditions can't really get the hair figured out. So it gets a little curly at 16, frizzy at 18, 21 is just forget it. It's a ponytail or maybe even a ball cap on the top of the head. And that's where we are today. We actually had a dew point of 22 earlier today. So this is high pressure that was over us, but then we had those storms that'll continue to move off to the south and east today. The main event is tomorrow. It's this low pressure system. By morning, we'll see Swan River and Dauphin, the Parklands region, into some storms. And then by the time we get to 4:30 in the afternoon, we're looking at a line of storms that'll move up through the Red Lake and then on into the early evening, moving down to the southeast. So there's 9:30 on Tuesday evening. And then by the time we're into Wednesday morning, we're already back into sunnier skies, kind of a sun-cloud mix on Wednesday morning, but lots of sunshine Wednesday afternoon, and a separate system bringing some cloud and some showers into northern Manitoba through into Thursday morning. But that's when high pressure really starts to take hold here in the south. And you'll see in the next few days of a forecast that it really does stabilize Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Watch for patchy fog into tomorrow morning. Dauphin, some pretty low numbers here. Look at the Winkler area and right around the Pembina Valley. That's where we could see some visibilities that are lower than a kilometer. Projected rainfall, I've been watching this through the day, and each forecast model run is kind of changing the numbers up a little bit, but you can see the potential for the higher amounts under thunderstorms in the next 36 hours with that projected rainfall graphic. 15 tonight is the low, so yeah, when we're going to sleep, it'll be much warmer than that, but 15 be the early morning temperature, 18 at about 8 a.m., and a chance for some thunderstorms on in through the afternoon with a high of 25 tomorrow. And then Wednesday, as we clear, it is a little bit cooler at 23. 24 is bang on seasonal and back to a sunny 27 on Friday.
Weather Update is brought to you by Home Equip, your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz is in Canada for a 3-day visit. The visit is largely expected to focus on energy issues. We have more on his meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.